into the and there.
Way every single time.
Every single time it gets me. Hello, everybody. My name's Claire Kennedy, and welcome to our Kennedy Street Live, where we have a weekly recovery chat. We call it #RecoveryTalks, and we invite some fabulous guest speakers to come along and to chat to myself and often Kevin. Who, when he's not at work doing his day job, he comes along and helps us with our charity. Today we've got a lovely gentleman who's a dear friend of ours called Graham Miller, and he's come all the way from Nottingham via Zoom, and he's going to chat to us a little bit later about his brilliant project, a really brilliant project. Kev's experienced his project. I've never been to visit you yet, have I, Graham? But
we've not managed, no.
Yeah, I think we're going to have to rectify that once this COVID's all sorted. So Graham's going to fill us in on all the great work that he does in that part of the world around recovery from addiction. So what I always do every week, Graham, so please forgive me if I'm repeating myself, and you've heard me say this before, but often we get new people listening every week. So I just explain a little bit about what we do at Kennedy Street. Kevin and myself have been helping people for 22 years now into recovery in the community. And about 8 years ago, we moved to Brighton and started a community project called Kennedy Street. And we re-registered as a charity a week before lockdown. And it couldn't have come at a better time, to be honest. Mm-hmm. We've not stopped. What's happened because of COVID is we've got a national helpline that's emerged, a national recovery helpline. So people ring us up who are interested in recovery. They might not know much about recovery. They might have already started the journey, or they might not be sure where to go next. So we just have those supportive conversations, really, give people an opportunity to just take those tentative steps. All of our volunteers are in recovery, so we're a peer-led project, and we do what we can to just connect people to the amazing resources that are available in the community, but often people just don't know much about them. So that's what we use this platform for, just to give people a little bit more information about the great work and to demystify the work that's going on in the community. So, yeah, it's an absolute joy and privilege. So I'm going to hand over to my gorgeous husband, who's just back from a foreign country, who's been excitingly doing stuff, which we can't talk about. But I'm sure he will just say hello to us. So over to you, Kev.
Hello, everyone. My name's Kevin Kennedy. For those who are listening on the pod, if you want to put a face to the name, I used to be in Coronation Street. I played Curly Watts, so now you have a face to put to this dulcet tone. I am the patron of Kennedy Street. I'm very proud to do so, and I've actually, today's guest is the lovely Graham Miller, who runs various things up in Nottingham. One of them being Sober, which is a lovely place in Nottingham, which is run by people in recovery. I have actually been there on my travels. It is a marvellous place. And if you are Nottingham based, please go along and give them some support. I think they really need it at the moment. So please go into Sober. It's just down the road from the lovely Theatre Royal in Nottingham. That's one of the many things that Graham does, because he is the Chief Exec of Double Impact Services, East Midlands Drug and Alcohol Recovery Charity. So I will let Graham tell you all about it. So I'll hand it over to you. Hello, Graham. How are you?
I'm good, Kevin. Really great to see you again, and good to see you again, Claire. Maybe in Nottingham in the flesh the next time. And just listening to you guys, then there's a lot of synergy. 22 years. Well, Double Impact is 22 years old as well. We started in '98, so that's a thing I didn't know this morning. Peer-led, there's synergy there. I'll go on and talk a little bit about the organisation, but we have, a very significant amount of our staff and supporters are in recovery. We're both charities, and you used my favourite word, connect. This is all about connection, and it's great. And I'll say it right out the front. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to connect to people that normally come along to watch you guys. But I think any recovery connection, how small, how quick, how long, could be vital to somebody's well-being in their life going forward. So hopefully we'll spread a little bit of that magic today to some other people across the country. So thanks for that opportunity. So a little bit about me. People make assumptions about, when you see people working in and running organisations, about what their background might be. And I like to be quite honest. My background's family recovery. My father was he called himself a hopeless drunk. So I'm quite happy to call him that. He would drink to feel normal. He was a musician, and I see Kev's got his brilliant selection of guitars in the background. My dad was a jazz pianist. So he was in that industry of being away, being out, being on tour, and coming home very late at night in whatever state that he managed to get himself into, to get up the next day and do it again. And he did that successfully for many, many, many years. And as you guys will know, quite often that can end up in some kind of hospital admission. And my dad's it was psychiatric, it was a locked ward, it was the lock and key. But fortunately, in that same building, that same hospital, there was a fellowship meeting. So there was a self-help Alcoholics Anonymous meeting, and I think somebody gave him that sort of hand of saying, "Come along, give it a try." And I think the rest is history for him. He didn't drink until he died. So, and he died in his early 80s, and that was in his late 40s when he stopped. So that's during his drinking. He stopped when I was 13. So my childhood, as some of you might be able to imagine, was very coloured and very rocky. And the reason I feel that I've kept a reasonably decent life myself was the strength of my mother in supporting the family, protecting the family, and trying to deal with him, as she would put it. And she did it through tough love. She connected into family support. She went to Al-Anon family groups, which was her solace, which kept her alive, I think. And obviously, as he got well, she got well, we got well. But I think personally, and this is a bit that I like to share, is at the age of 17, I felt things were good. Dad hadn't drank for a number of years. He was back in work. He was about to start getting back into his music as well. So I went traveling. I went away, and I was away for a good number of years. And then I realised that I was running away because I hadn't dealt with me and my stuff that I had experienced. I was very fortunately, my father was never violent towards people. He would throw glasses at walls. He was that kind of hopeless drunk. But he never beat the children or anything. I don't have that horror in my life, but I do have the trauma of living with an alcoholic, and are they going to come through the door, and what are they going to do next? And is there going to be food on the table? And that type of stuff, that worry that I suppose never leaves you. In my mid-20s, I realised it took me that long. Do something about your own recovery. And that's when I really picked up me as a human and understood that I had more to give than just what I was doing. I got involved with working with young people in a national charity, many of whom were homeless, many of whom had problems that I'd been through. And I did 10 years of working for that national charity, which was absolutely fantastic. But then this opportunity came along, and this was almost, I wasn't given a job, but the application form was almost put under my nose by a friend and said, "That's for you." And it just simply said, "We're going to start a drug and alcohol project that's going to help people." Well, actually, it said it's going to help people from heroin use to move away from heroin use and start to rebuild or restructure their life. So I applied, went to the interview, got the job, which was fantastic. But in the interview, there was a guy who was sat there, tattoos all over him, biker jacket. He looked really scary. But when he spoke, he was enabling and soft and caring. And this turned out to be Tony Herbert. And this is Tony Herbert's brainchild. So if anybody ever says that whole founder syndrome, you know, and feeling like you're a fraud, I really am a fraud, because this is Tony's brainchild. And he gave me the opportunity of realizing that dream, because he didn't want to do it. It wasn't his thing. So we sat with a single sheet of flip chart paper. I've still got it in the office today, and we scribbled down, how do you get from here to the hell of addiction to a structure in your life? And it was just written on one sheet of paper, and it's quite a simple explanation. We knew that people had to have a roof over their head. They had to deal with a pile of brown envelopes at some point, with all the debts and past in it that had to be dealt with. They had to restructure their education or be educated for the first time, because a lot of people will have left school at a very early age and not get any formal qualifications. And bottom line for us is, when we started working with people and became peer-led, is I want to stop drinking. People always said that. I want to stop using, and I want to start the process of getting into work. Yeah. So if you look at those three pillars, we still do that today. That is the most important thing. Education, training, and employment being one. Staying, stop drinking, and staying off the drugs. That's what people actually come into treatment for. And somehow, in my humble opinion, they get a bit stuck. And I think we've got a responsibility there as providers of these services to unstick people. It's not there. They come in, I want to stop. And they seem to be in there for a long time before they start to come into what we recognise is a recovery sort of structure.
Graham,
yeah, go on.
Graham, can I just ask you one question? This is a technical question, so I'm sorry about this. Could you just put the collar down on your jacket, because it keeps hitting your microphone?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, and there's a lot of crackling. But no, I'm sorry to interrupt you. I really do. I'm gripped by what you're saying, and
I'll try and be
so
mindful of that. I'll try and move my head around.
It's just really kept hitting you zip on your collar, but no.
So
no, it's on
the humble beginnings of Tony's idea. I should really sort of give you a bit of a snapshot. So the idea of providing something, and we were a one-to-one service. There was just me for the first 3 years, from 98 to 2001, looking after individuals, their needs, and trying not to provide a service to them, but to get them to develop the skills they need to get those services for themselves, to create that independence, rather than because it's easy to be dependent on services and family and friends all the time. People need independence to move forward. In 2001, we grew a little bit. We started to provide formal education as part of the offer. So we started with a basic IT course, which we still give those skills out today. We help people with their basic maths, English, all that type of stuff, literacy, if they need it, because some don't. Some come to us that don't need any of that. And we started our first ever simple group program. So we had groups on offer where people could come along, learn from each other, peer groups, guided peer support, that type of thing. And then the government started to invest in drug and alcohol treatment, and that's when we really grew from being a very small charity to where we are today. We employ about 60 staff now just in the charity. And then we've got Cafe Sobar, which the staffing levels are right down at the moment. That's because of the pandemic. I won't go into that sort of. But Sobar at one point was employing 12 people. But with only doing a takeaway service. So the organisation, we try to meet those needs as much as we can. And what we do now is we firmly focus on personal development. This is now about a personal development program, because what people told us is, please don't give me a care plan. I don't want to be in care. I'm not in care. I want to move on. That care word gets people stuck. Calling it personal development gets people unstuck. So everybody's got a plan. And we've got now what we call our Double Impact Academy, which is our education, training and employment program, which we deliver at the moment almost entirely online, but can be done in a classroom type setting or a group room type setting. And depending on how things go with the pandemic, I firmly believe we'll end up with a bit of a blend of some people in classrooms and some people online, because it really helps with, if you look at Nottinghamshire and Lincolnshire, two of our big operational areas, they are so rural, yeah. And you might be expecting somebody to sit on a bus for 2 hours to get to a 1 hour meeting to then sit on a bus to go home for 2 hours. I'd rather that we keep some of that online, because those numbers have gone up. Those people that want to access us remotely have gone up during the pandemic. So that's a little bit about the organisation. And like yourselves, we've got a charity, we've got trustees, and then we've got our social enterprise. And I'll maybe just round off by talking a little bit about Cafe Soul Bar. So one of the rules, and I'll say this to both of you today, is we don't believe there is such a thing as a stupid question or a stupid idea. We've got plenty of stupid answers, but stupid questions are okay. And one of my team, along with one of our the people who use our services, said we need a cafe. And they called it, they came to me and said some kind of serenity place, a serenity cafe or something like that. And but we think it's a stupid idea. And from that day to actually opening Cafe Soul Bar was about 4 years. So that it wasn't a stupid idea. And funders believed in it, we believed in it, and if Kev will tell you, it's a contemporary. Look it up online. It's a contemporary venue. It's beautifully designed, and it just feels right. It doesn't feel like anything. Or I'm not being derogatory towards community cafe, but it doesn't feel like a community cafe. It feels like a place that you want to be seen in the centre of a city without alcohol. Yeah. So you want to be seen and see other people. And there's various fellowship groups, so various self-help. Alcoholics Anonymous, for example, runs out of that building. So you can walk in there. People don't know if you're going for a coffee or if you're going to anywhere or a meeting. You just go through a door and there's a meeting upstairs. Unfortunately, we can't host them at the moment because the COVID rules don't allow us to have. There's 25 people coming, and the room currently in its configuration would allow 5 or 6 at a max. So we're really struggling with that bit. So yeah, Cafe Soul Bar has been going now for about 6 years. We've been really fortunate, and I'll do a little bit of a shout out for the NatWest. The NatWest put up a grant scheme for businesses that were struggling. And they've given us some support to help us through the difficult winter and hopefully through to a vaccination programme and out the other end of this pandemic. So it's great that, there's such competition for money to support charities, for an organisation to take a bit of a risk and say, well, this is different. This has got a chance of a business bounce back. So we're really excited about that support and things like the National Lottery. And then right down to the people that fund us locally, the local authorities, Nottingham City Council, Lincolnshire County Council, the big funders who still see that there's an important place for recovery. I think they get it. I think they get the money invested in recovery is a saving in people re-accessing treatment. And I'll just round it back to Tony. Tony told me when I first met him, he had 22 attempts at stopping. Yeah, 22. And the last one almost killed him. And then he stopped, yeah. And he said, it shouldn't be that difficult or that complicated. It doesn't need to be, yeah. So that's when he came up with the idea of bringing these different social connection facets that are needed to keep somebody well in a good direction and getting on with their lives. So that's a bit about me and the organisation. So thanks for that opportunity to talk about it.
Amazing. Truly amazing. I'm always fascinated by how projects came about. And yeah, what a great guy Tony Herbert is. Is he still involved with your project?
Tony passed away.
Oh, did he?
The old damage that he did to his liver caught up with him. So but we fortunately, very fortunately, we had we dedicated part of our building in his name, and his mum came along and some of his family. So the name lives on. It's actually the room where all the self-help meetings happen, which I think is really appropriate because he was a big advocate of self-help. He's a big believer in it. So yeah.
What an amazing man, and God rest his soul.
Yeah.
But he's like you say, you know, it's the legacy lives on, doesn't it?
It does. It does. Yeah. Yeah.
Amazing testimony. That. Thank you so much, Kev. Have you got any questions that you want to ask Graham?
Just unmute myself there. Yeah, thank you for that, Graham. And I have to reiterate what you said about Sobar. I've been in it, and it looks like a very high-end coffee shop, and it is brilliant, and the atmosphere is amazing. Could you tell me a little bit about the problems which are prevalent, really, in Nottingham, your surrounding area? Because people that hopefully be able to use the Sobar and all your services are from that area. So what would they do? What is the problems for that area, and how would they get in touch with you to start their road to recovery?
Like anywhere else, Kev, I think Nottingham City, for example, it's very high up on the poverty and health inequalities sort of league tables, if you like, unlike the football club, which is not at the top of its league table. So I'll leave that one for another day. So drug problems are as high as anywhere else in the country. Alcohol problems, similarly. There's a large student population, so there's a lot of, I suppose, if you like, new drug markets around. If you've got 60,000 students, that's going to attract new drug markets. But it's also a massive city centre drinking culture. Nottingham's not a big city, as you well know, Kev, but to have 60,000 students, no wonder we went from not having a problem with COVID infections to having the highest in the country as soon as the universities went back. I'm not talking about students misbehaving. That's just what happens when you bring 60,000 people into a small city centre. I think they got a bit of a raw deal, and some of them were naughty, but I remember what I was like when I was a student, so I can't possibly comment. So that's the problems, the long-term unemployment, and you've got it across Nottinghamshire, you've got it in Lincolnshire as well with the problems of the rural community. So we've got all of that going on. And our services really are designed to support people once they've taken that decision to stop. And the majority of them will either be in a treatment, possibly a clinical treatment program where they're getting support from a treatment centre, or they're getting support from their GP. And other people will be in rehab and looking to re-establish themselves back to Nottingham. And that's the best time for us to pick people up, is that sort of as early on in their recovery journey as we can meet them. We'll do that process and start the process of building the future with them. More recently, and a bit like yourselves, there's a lot of demand of people who are trying to access help, and they just don't know where to go. And people being forced to be at home together, and people realising that it's not as rosy as it is, and somebody's drinking dangerously here, somebody else is using drugs in the house that they weren't aware of. And those family members, and it resonates with me, are then phoning up for support and help. And for one reason or another, they're not going direct to the people that can help them. So, a bit like yourself, a lot of signposting is becoming, that's been very high during the last 10 months, and also increasing. And alcohol is increasing quicker than anything. And at any time that I've experienced in the last 22 years, people looking for alcohol support. I think that's a big one. So getting in touch with us, it's straightforward. Obviously, there's the websites. You've got doubleimpact.org.uk, and maybe Claire, if you nod, if you tell me that's going to get on Facebook as well, hopefully. And yeah,
I've been scrolling it across the bottom of the screen as you speak.
Yeah,
so
there we go.
As if I'm.
That's exactly how you get in touch with us. That's it. Actually, if you ring that phone number today, I shouldn't say it. It'll be me that picks up the phone. I've got the phone for today, so yeah. So what we try to do with people, we start quite simply with making a connection with people. Is they'll either get, they'll get a call from one of the team, they'll get invited along on pre-pandemic times to a Connect group, but during the pandemic you'll be invited to a Connect Zoom. Now, I know there's that technological divide, that not everybody's got the technology. I would still say to people, get in touch. We will try to find a way of getting people connected. It's been difficult, but we've managed to do it. I've had staff sitting on people's driveways at the start of the pandemic, teaching them how to use a tablet and connect it to the internet so they can get to the Zoom meeting that afternoon. And if that's what it takes, and maybe there's some people out there that, and I know you've done it, Claire, that would recycle laptops and we could then distribute them. So there's any way that we can find a way of getting people connected. And I think that connection is so important for people. So that's a little bit about us, Kev.
You did mention that you get a lot of people who are in recovery, or not in recovery, but are in rehabs, who are looking for the next stage. Yeah. But do you cater for people who are right at the beginning, who the first contact, if you like? And I know that you like those words like contact and it's self-help. I think that's very good and it's very important. But if someone's like right now is just beginning their journey, have decided today that they're going to ring someone, will you accept their phone calls and will you signpost them or help them straight away?
If somebody phoned me today, I would be able to connect them into the services and the areas that we work in. It's quite straightforward because in Nottingham, we jointly provide the services with 2 other providers. So my staff work in there, yeah? So we've got staff work. So there's a triage service there, and I hate using those words, but there is a triage service. If somebody called me today, I could get either them to phone the triage or got somebody from triage to phone them. Same in Lincolnshire. We work with We Are With You, who were formerly Ad Action. I think this is, we actually met through a connection of Ad Action, Kev, at a conference that you spoke at. I think that's when we first met many years ago. Might have been Glasgow, actually. I think it was Glasgow. So in Lincolnshire, we work with We Are With You, and again, we would signpost. Because we work in the same buildings, we're not disconnected. We are a fully integrated system, both in Nottingham and in Lincolnshire. So yes, if somebody phones up, they're not just going to, we will try to connect them. That's the commitment we make. Yeah. Because I know the hardest thing is picking up the phone. It's so hard. And unfortunately, I think drug and alcohol treatment's not equitable around the country. As well, we get people phoning from other areas because, well, I can't get the help. Yeah, they're telling me I've got to wait for 2 weeks before somebody will phone me back, or and it shouldn't. You must hear exactly the same as that. Yeah, and it's quite soul destroying for the individual to be palmed off again. So if we can avoid one less, or make it one less palm off or one less hand off. Let's do it.
Yeah. So if you're actually listening to this or you're actually watching this and now's the time, this is what Kennedy Street do and what Graham Miller does is the help is instant. Whereas if you go to the social services, they're not their fault because they're understaffed and underfunded and the rest of it, as we all know, you will get help immediately, folks. So, and that's important. So, and we understand how difficult it is to make that first contact. And if you do that, I promise you, if you ring either Kennedy Street or Graham, you'll get that help you need straight away, certainly signposted in the right way.
Yeah, and I think that's what we've been finding a lot of, because I mean, obviously, but I know what a great job you're doing. And what we found is that during the lockdown, especially the first lockdown, especially in the area that we live in, Sussex, because the service providers are so big, it was very difficult for them to get online. So little charities like ours, which are peer-led, which are right in the middle at the heart of what we're doing, and we're run by people who are actively engaged in recovery, we were able to connect people far quicker and efficiently, and basically work with people whilst we were able to connect them with services. And like you say, it's not been easy. It's not been easy at all during COVID. But during this lockdown period, the capacity for us as a tiny organisation in comparison to yourselves to connect people with recovery in the community and keep connected and stay, you know, in a conversation, and build the momentum with people, has been phenomenal. It's been phenomenal because the only option people have had, especially in Sussex, is community integration into fellowships. But if you don't know how to do that, you don't know how to do that. So that's where we've come in, and just connecting people virtually. The success rate's been phenomenal, really phenomenal. But it is great to work in partnership with, you know, big companies like yourself and big service providers. Like in our area, it's CGL. So, you know, we work very closely with CGL because they do the clinical side, you know, where...
What's CGL, please?
It stands for Change, Grow, Live. So it's like Graham was talking about, Add Action. So these are big service providers that have got hundreds, if not thousands, of staff all over the country. And they generally win what they call Public Health England tenders, which means, so CGL, Change, Grow, Live, the contract for Sussex will come up to provide drug and alcohol services. I feel like I'm explaining this to Kev, but I am explaining it to the public as well, because people don't understand how it all works. And forgive me, Graham, if I'm wrong. So please tell me if I'm getting it, you know, complex. But yeah, so they win the tenders. They bid for tenders, don't they?
Yes, they do. Yeah. You've got it absolutely right. Yeah.
There we go, Kev. So a little lesson in tendering from Public Health England, how Public Health England works. But often, because of the size of these organisations, it's very difficult for them to react quickly. So that's where little charities like ours come in really handy.
What help can you give immediately to someone who rings you up and say, right, I'm ready now to stop. I've decided today's the day. What can you do for me straight away?
So if you were phoning me now and you were Nottingham based, I would put you in touch with, it's called Nottingham Recovery Network. That's what they're called. You can look that up online. And I would ask you to contact them directly. Now, if you didn't feel that was you'd made one phone call, you didn't have the energy to make another one. I'd say, just let me have your details. I'll give your details to the team and I'll ask them to call you. And that would start the process. And right, as you guys well know, right throughout the whole of the pandemic, those first contact points have stayed open. Yeah, people have this myth in their head that people aren't working. All of those staff are frontline staff, and I can assure you they've worked all the way through. And that's really reassuring, and they've done a fantastic job of keeping our current people safe and trying to see new people at the same time. So yeah, I would always encourage somebody to make that first approach.
And how confidential is it? Because I don't want my wife to know, or I don't want my work to know that I've actually been in contact. I know that this doesn't happen, but you know, people are paranoid, and in some cases, quite rightly so, that if I'm using something like this, or a telephone call or a Zoom, that people will know that I'm contacting people with a view to help me with my alcohol problem, and I don't want people to know that.
No, it's a really good point. And in my experience, unless there's a safeguarding issue with children and families and vulnerable adults, it's completely confidential. And I think the one that came in over recent years is the risk of terrorism as well. So if that was involved, you're duty bound by law. But your normal confidentiality, people are not going to be phoning up employers and saying this guy's come along, or this lady's come along and disclosed that they're using drugs. So it really is around safeguarding would be the only time. And I'm happy to say that it's important people know. But yeah, not going to phone somebody's wife or husband and say Johnny's drinking.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And how much will it cost me to get in touch with you and to access these services that you can provide?
This is my favourite part, and I will quantify it. It is completely free. Yeah. If the person comes along and gives it 1% commitment, we'll try and put 100% back in. The only bit that isn't free is if you come to Cafe Sober, you have to buy a coffee. So I'm sorry about that. If it was free, I'd make it free. But well, in saying that, we did the Marcus Rashford campaign during the half term. So we did do free meals for children and free drinks for their parents. And we've just, I just found out before I came online this morning, a local company in Nottingham called the Treat Kitchen. Big shout out for them, the Treat Kitchen. You can buy their stuff online. They're fantastic, by the way. And we're their charity of the year. So a definite plug for the Treat Kitchen. And they've just done a Black Friday fundraising campaign where you could give something to Double Impact, and they put some of the profits over to us. And that's going to pay for, if we're out of the restrictions, that's going to pay for family children's dinners over Christmas. So that's really good news. I just found that out this morning. So well done to them, and thank you, and on behalf of the families that have already benefited and will benefit from that, because as we know, feeding the hungry wens, as we say in Glasgow. Yeah, it needs doing. It needs doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, well done, Treat Kitchen. Love the work that you're doing. And it is so important to get alongside charities. You know, we've got some good companies in Brighton who get alongside us and do fundraising on our behalf. And, you know, just there are some amazing people out there. And the thing is now more than ever, I mean, the people that have been ringing us on our helpline generally are people that may not have accessed services before, you know, people that are struggling, and they might have had underlying addiction issues before the pandemic, and they've just emerged, like they've gone off like a Polaris missile during the pandemic because of the fear and isolation. And you know what it's like if you've got an addiction problem and then you put all of this uncertainty and just fear on top of it, and people losing the jobs. You know, we've had a lot of people that have been furloughed initially, dads that have been furloughed, and then they've lost the job. You know, so it's so the provision that the Treat Kitchen are, you know, providing with you guys, it's not just the people that we expect that will be accessing these types of provision. There's people who may never have had to reach out and ask for help before asking for help.
And I mentioned earlier on about, you know, getting people into employment. Treat Kitchen's one of the companies that is very good at doing that with people who've come through our journey. So that's, you know, they really do put their money where their mouth is. And that hasn't always gone smoothly, but they've not walked away from it. They've stuck with it and said, well, it's not going to happen with everybody, you know, so yeah.
So if I sort of rang, I mean, I want to stop drinking. Could you help me get some employment after if I get sober or get on into recovery? Can you help me find employment? And if so, how long would that actually take? What's the process for that?
Okay, yeah, we do return to work. Everything we do is geared towards returning to work. So starts with education, if people need any education or training or retraining. And then we have connections with employers. We've got staff that are dedicated to getting people into work. That's their job. So they'll do your CV, they'll do your interview prep. We had the HMRC in to do some mock interviews with us. So as part of their staff development, they get people coming out and working with charities. So those kind of tricks are great because it makes it real for the person who needs to get a job. And then when they go for a real interview, they've had feedback, they've had practice, they know what to expect and how to deal with it. So that is one of the, you know, Kevin, like I said at the start, people want to stop drinking, they want to stop using, and they want to start working. So we've got a responsibility. How much time that takes, it will depend on the individual. But as soon as people are work ready, we would support that process. And part of the work also involves, if the person wants to do this with the employer and tell the employer about their journey, that we'll work with the employer too, so that if they do hit a bump in the road, the employer can give us a ring and say, we're not sure what's happening here. And we've done that on a number of occasions. And in some occasions, that's stopped the person just getting sacked. Yeah. they've had a break, they've had 2 weeks off, they've realigned their recovery and got back in. And that's better than another 2 years of the hell of addiction. So
if I'm in work already and I've got a job, but I'm just about hanging on,
yeah.
If I partake in your face-to-face or one-to-one recovery, can you provide some sort of certification that I can give to my employers, or will you in contact on my behalf with my permission to say this person has got a certificate or whatever? I'm sorry to put it in layman's terms, but this is for people who might have this problem. I want to show my employees that, yes, I admit I've been drinking too much, but I'm doing something about it. Is that something you can provide?
I would never say no to that, because you're helping somebody hold that job down. And as we all know, if you're in work, it's easy to stay in work. It's much easier to stay in work than trying to get from unemployment back into work. So yes, we do that. But obviously, I didn't mention the training that we provide is all accredited. No, sorry, it's not all accredited. We have accredited training and we've got non-accredited training. And part of the accredited training program is drug and alcohol awareness. So you do get a certificate for that you could then show to the employer. And it's a conversation starter, isn't it, about what you're doing in the processes that you're working on. But yeah, with somebody's permission, if an employer said, is this person getting support from you? How's it going? Of course, we would support that.
And
let me just say, Kev, I think personally that is amazing, because we know from our own experience of what we do, and from Kev's experience as well, if you have got somebody who is in recovery within an organisation, within a business, and they have got this amazing knowledge, which it is amazing, recovery is amazing, then they can, and especially if they're open about it, and that they're not sort of hiding the light under a bushel, and they know that other people can go. So when Kev got well, for instance, he became like a go-to person. If anybody was struggling, then, and still to this day, he's a go-to person. If even other actors in the acting world know that Kev's in recovery, they will come to him and they'll have a conversation with him and just say, Kev, you know what? I don't know where to start. I think it's so important and so essential in this day and age. So well done. Absolutely love that bit. Sorry, Kev, I had to say that.
Yeah, no, thank you. No, it's right. But again, I'm being devil's advocate here. If I want to help myself, right? But this course, I don't like the word course. And the reason why that is because I'm not very academic. My writing is not the best. And not my reading is not the best. Is a lot of writing and reading involved in this, or is it done in another way?
As you know, well, you might not know, Kev, a lot of teaching methods and programs nowadays, you can do your work in different ways. So, for example, you can do video work rather than written work, and not on all courses, but on some. But what we do have is trained and qualified tutors who will work with the individuals, providing that literacy and numeracy support that they might be lacking. And within educational training, that's allowed, yeah. So let's use every tool that we've got, and let's not be ashamed of it, because people didn't choose to have poor literacy or numeracy. It might be a byproduct of their family history. It might be their own addictions that's brought that on. So yeah, we work with that, and it's right that we do. It's the best way forward.
Unmute myself. I have so many questions. I think you might have to come back another time, because
more than happy.
We've loved having you. But before we do finish up, I really want to ask about, I'm as passionate about recovery, about family recovery, as I am, recovery for the addict that's suffering. Do you do any work with family members? Do you offer them any support?
So we've started some family work, which is new to us in the last couple of years, in one of our initiatives down in Boston, not Boston, USA, unfortunately, but Boston in Lincolnshire. Yeah, we've got a thing down there called Boston Recovery Pathways, where we do work with the families. In other for example, in Nottingham and Lincoln, there are family services. We don't want to compete. We want to uncomplicate it for people, so we just refer into the family services. Personally, I'd love to see us developing our family work, because it's just so important. You know, I remember that shame that I felt, and you know, always being the kid at school that didn't have the right blazer, or I wore trainers and no shoes, and the trainers had holes in them. You know, and you just felt out of place all the time. And personally, I left the thoughts inside my head too long. I would have liked support around that earlier, and that's probably down to me and my own pride, but you know, and maybe not knowing where to go. And it goes back to a lot of Kev's questions: how do you get help? Where do you go for help? So, but I again, you know, the people that do it for free are amazing. You know, all those self-help groups out there, and we've mentioned a few this morning. Maybe mention, for example, Al-Anon family support groups. It's a really great starting point for people. And there are other good methodologies out there too. We're not on the BBC, are we? Not yet.
No.
Maybe next time. Yeah.
But there are lots
ever,
and lots of other support groups, like Co-Anon, there's Fam-Anon, there's so many different anonymous fellowships for family members. But I think it's absolutely fabulous what you're doing, and
thank you.
Absolutely love. And I personally think, you know, there is such a need for more knowledge around family recovery, because it's not just the person that's suffering with the addiction that's impacted. Like you say, you know, kids, we do a lot of work with families that are affected, because, you know, for every one addict, their addiction affects 10 people, but so does recovery. So, you know, it's just giving kids an opportunity to be around other kids. And there's Alateen as well. I don't know if you ever went to Alateen growing up.
Yeah.
It's amazing. And it just gives people that opportunity, especially young people who suffer quietly. Again, like you said, shame and stigma. And because of the love of the parent, they don't want to be seen to be sort of criticising the parent, and they need a safe place to be able to start to have those conversations where they talk about how they feel. So yeah, I think, you know, there's so much work to be done. But thanks goodness there are places that people can start their adventures. Did you want to add anything else, Kev, before we
say? Usually I've got a load of questions, but Graham, as usual, is so eloquent and informational. I think I might have just made that word up. Informational. But
informative is the word.
Informative, but I quite like informational. It's a good word. That you've covered everything. And again, Graham, I know, because we've met before, that you have a great passion for this, and I think that comes across. And I want to thank you for coming on. And I want to reiterate that anyone in lovely Nottingham, it was a beautiful city with really, really great, nice people. Please go into SOBAR and show your support, because it's there and it's for you. And just go along, because it's a great atmosphere, and I'm sure you'll be welcomed. Thank you again, Graham.
Well, thank you, guys. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Graham. And like I said, I'd love you to come back next year. Once this whole period is finished, and let us know, keep us up to speed with how it's all going. And for sure in the new year, we're definitely going to come and visit you at Cafe SOBAR.
Can I make one plug for the new year?
Yeah, please do.
So we're going to do a virtual event in February, which is going to be Get Fit for February. And we, as you know, Claire, we're a bunch of crazy runners up here. You know what I'm like with my running addiction. But we're going to make an event that you can choose your own distance. You can walk, you can take your pushchair, you can carry your baby in a sling if you want to do that, or you push a wheelchair, or you can run, set a distance, virtual event, raise a bit of money for Double Impact. So we'll send you those links in the next few weeks to that event. Yeah, you might even want to do one yourself.
Yeah, please do. We're happy to. Kev was great success. He did our 5 kilometre challenge. We did a virtual 5 kilometre fundraiser. It was a soaring success, and I'm sure there's loads of people out there who happily get behind you, because, you know, we're all impacted, aren't we? And if we can support this amazing opportunity where we can encourage people to just take those tentative steps towards recovery and start to have conversations. And, you know, as you and I know, and as Kev knows, the first step is asking for help, you know. So, yeah, if you've got any questions, feel free to ask me or our helpline. We've got trained peer supporters on there who can signpost you and connect you to amazing projects like Graham's. Or if you're somewhere else in the country, if you're in Manchester, we know about all that's going on in Manchester, Scotland, Wales. We've got a resource list that's as long as tall as I am at the minute, so we can connect people with amazing resources around the country. So thank you, Graham, for coming along and sharing your experience, strength and hope with us. I think you're amazing, and we want to wish you a very Merry Christmas to you and your beautiful family.
Thank you very much, and you guys stay safe and stay strong and keep the journey going, as they say. Keep the journey going.
Oh, we will.
Thanks for your time, much appreciated.
Thank you, Graham. Lots of love to you. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas all. Cheers. Bye. Bye.